Okay, so we are here today joining Jess White in her studio in Tring to talk about her career and her exhibition at Queen's Park Art Centre. So first of all, Jess, if you want to start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your sort of background.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose a freelance illustrator, but that's split half the week every week with working for artists. So I did a degree in illustration. And then really straight after that, not really knowing what I wanted to do, I started working for contemporary artists. I haven't really done anything else other than alongside that over the past few years been doing more freelance work.
And so how did you sort of get your first position coming, fresh out of art school and looking for a job, and how did the sort of opportunities?
It was pure chance, really, real just luck. I knew a few people from university in Cornwall, and they were from Stroud, and Damien Hirst had a main studio there, and they just told me that he was planning on opening up a new studio in London for an exhibition in LA at the Gagosian, and it was a really tight schedule, so they wanted people for just 6 months initially to try and get all the work done. So I sent my CV, which was obviously really feeble at that point, and I got asked to go for a trial day, and then I got the job, and which turned into sort of 3 years rather than 6 months.
And so in terms of your sort of drawing and practicing, is it something that you've done since you were a child, or something you sort of discovered as you were growing up? How did it come about?
I've always drawn. It was really, that was all there is that I wanted to do. There wasn't really any other option for me. That's all I ever wanted to do, and I always drew. Obviously what I drew and what I was interested in changed, and there were different stages. At one point I wanted to be Jim Davis and just draw Garfield, and then eventually I just found what I really wanted to draw. But yeah, always, there wasn't any other thing that I wanted to do.
Okay, that's great. Well, now we've heard your sort of background, if we can talk about your exhibition, which is at Queen's Park Art Centre at the moment, so Studies of Iconography and Nature. If you can tell us a bit more about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, I guess it's really just a showcase, if I could call it that. I don't really know what else to call it, of the last 18 months of my work. Not all of it, obviously, because I've been doing other things and commissions and stuff, but certainly the drawings. It's just what I've been drawing, I suppose, since the pandemic. And then a more recent element, which is the woodcuts, the etchings, which I've only really been doing this year. So it's a mix of all of the drawings, mainly birds, I'd say, I've done since the pandemic, and then this year, etchings, some studies of saints and monarchs.
So that's really interesting. If about the sort of juxtaposition of the drawings, the sort of natural work and birds, and then the iconography. So why are you sort of drawn to those two sort of subjects in particular? And is there any relation to each other?
I think so. I mean, I've always, I suppose, since I graduated, really what I only wanted to draw was things related to the natural world. But a couple of years ago, I went to an exhibition at the British Library. It was Anglo-Saxon Kingdoms, and it was an amazing display that had so many examples of sort of 10th, 11th, 12th century manuscripts, and obviously it depicted a lot of religious art, but it just was really palpable, the connection between natural science and Anglo-Saxon art, I suppose, because really they thought it was created by God, so that connection was always there. So really I think they're really intertwined, surprisingly, and so I think they're quite good bedfellows, really. However, even if you're not religious, you can see that connection.
And I like sort of looking at the pieces, like as you say, like the sort of the amount of detail in like the clothing and things of the saints, and then also looking at feathers and in birds and the details there. You know, I can sort of see a sort of connection in your drawing with that.
Yeah, I suppose the clothing and the jewelry and everything is mainly, I love Holbein, you know, those amazing portraits of Tudors that you can see in the portrait gallery, and because the face is always very naive and you don't really get any sort of an impression of what they would have actually looked like.
Yeah.
But the clothes, fabrics, the jewelry, it's always so detailed, and I suppose I took that into the saints as well, because that's, you know, those old illuminated manuscripts, they're not very detailed, so I suppose I sort of translated that into their clothing. But yeah, certainly with the drawings of birds, that's the bit, and mushrooms and everything else, that's the bit that I find really interesting, is the textures.
Yeah.
And the, you know, the real fine details, the little elements that then make up the bigger elements. So that's something I find really interesting.
Yeah, and I can really, what I find interesting is the textures and details that are then have been created in the etchings in the wood.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible to see how, you know, sort of flat piece of wood is then transformed into something that you just want to touch. It's just full of texture.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the level of detail you can get is amazing. I love the fact, obviously the drawings exist, so it is an object, but there's something really special about the wood. I mean, it really feels like an actual object, you know, something special, which is something that I really love that element of it.
And so do you think that's something you're going to sort of take forward and explore more?
Yeah, definitely. And it's lovely, because obviously all I do with my job with Rakib is draw, and I've just drawn for so long. I mean, I had a long period off, but all I do is draw. So it's been really lovely to not have to do that, and to just look at something else, transforming those drawings and being able to do something different, like the lacquering and the gold leafing, and actually more transforming something else that I've already made. Yeah, so I definitely do more.
And what I've been wanting to ask is about the colour orange. You're talking about the lacquering, so, you know, was there something particular behind that? Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, again, with that show at the British Library, it was so extraordinary, the colours. I mean, these things are sort of from the 11th century, and they look like they've been coloured yesterday. They always have pop of colour. I mean, the palette's really limited, but it's there, and it's sort of reds, greens. So I wanted for there to be that element that that feeling that I had when you walk into the room, and actually the colours are a real surprise. There's that real pop of shock orange. Those, as well as it working really well with the gold, I suppose the pagan element of orange, that's sort of making it my interpretation of these saints, and choosing something relatively pagan, I suppose.
And so you mentioned how you're just sort of drawing all the time. So have you sort of found that the sort of past year with the pandemic has changed your sort of the way you focus on, you know, allowing yourself to draw? And do you sort of schedule in time, or do you feel like it's been because of staying at home and having time, and then there is that sort of pressure that you should be producing more? How have you found it over the past year?
I think it's both. I mean, I've got two children who are really young, 3 and 7, and they're obviously home for a long period of time. So I actually, because everything that was happening, I didn't feel pressure. I felt like just surviving, I suppose, like everybody else, and you know, was a bit of a triumph. But certainly drawing and getting to do work felt like a huge luxury. It felt like a treat, I suppose, like loads of these small things. It felt like thing to get some time to just do that. And so I suppose you feel really, and now the children are back in childcare, and I am, and everything's starting to get back into its normal routine, I really appreciate it. Feels like I've got so much time. It's fantastic. So yeah, it just felt like a real treat to do it, actually.
And in terms of your sort of inspiration over the last year, as with everybody, being kept at home, and we weren't able to go places and explore. So was it the case of you just going out into your back garden and trying to find inspiration there, or books, or, how did you, as we weren't able to get out, how did you find your inspiration?
It was that, actually, yeah, going on your daily walk, and seeing, I suppose nobody really could tell whether it was that you're just more observant and have more time, but there seemed to be so many birds. It was, especially last spring, I'd never watched spring unfold like we were able to. So that was really inspiring. And then, of course, we've got so many books here, secondhand books, and I started to really look at those, because obviously you can't go to shows. I'd normally go to a show and I always buy the catalogue to take home, but it just wasn't an option. So yeah, both those things. And it was really lovely to see, to sort of be forced to see what you have on your doorstep, because that's all you had. Yeah,
exactly. I think everybody discovered so many beautiful things around them that they never before, because you had time to. It was a sort of indulgence.
Yeah, that's right.
So talking about that, and things being local, do you think because of that there might be a sort of change or shift in how people are going to sort of seek out cultural activities, given the sort of restricting of travel, or even sort of preference that people might have now to stay at home?
I think so. I mean, obviously it depends where you live. Some people haven't been stuck in a really beautiful place, or somewhere with lots of facilities. But certainly, yeah, I think so. Everyone that I've talked to, that's been the case. I suppose because people have been given the opportunity to fall in love with their area. So yeah, I would have thought so.
And then something I was sort of reading about recently was talking about the demise of drawing classes in some of Britain's most prestigious art schools, because they were talking about the focus sort of now these days with art sort of shifting towards conceptual art. So I was just wondering how important you think it is for artists to have a sort of base level of drawing as a fundamental part of their research.
Well, I think it's really important, but I think, I studied illustration. I didn't study fine art, so probably a lot of people would disagree with that, and they'd probably be right. I don't know. I'm not hugely knowledgeable about contemporary art, but certainly I suppose everybody who goes to art school, it's sort of drilled into you a little bit, or it was me a long time ago, obviously, but people like Picasso, who started to paint purely abstract work, he was an amazing draftsman. I suppose it's always been like a real good jumping off point to be really skilled, but also life drawing, all those things, it's so enjoyable, and life drawing is such a brilliant way to learn to draw and things like that. It's just really great fun as well as anything else. But I don't know, I'm sure that people would disagree with me on how important it is. Maybe they think it's becoming more redundant. But even when with Damien Hirst, I wasn't doing anything that you could transfer. It was a very unusual job with no transferable skills, I'd say, because it was so strange. But with Rakib, who I've been working for nearly 12 years this summer, I just draw all day, and even like month to month, you can see how your drawing improves just by drawing. It's never something which has an end point. You can always improve. So
practicing and
yeah, I think it is a really
skill evolving.
Yeah, exactly. So with something like illustration, or having to understand form and have a really good quality of line, I think it's really important. But yeah, I'm sure people would disagree.
So do you sort of do you have a sketchbook sort of on you or near you at all times, in that you open and you have to jot down, or is it something that you will, you'll sort of schedule that time to go and then hope the creativity comes at that point?
Yeah, no, it sounds so unromantic, I'm sure, but I know I never carry a sketchbook, and it's always seeing something either in a book or something in a documentary or something in an exhibition or on your phone, and then I'll love it, and I'll sort of mull it over, and then I'll schedule in time to create whatever I want to. It's much more like that, which sounds really unromantic, and but yeah, I never carry a sketchbook, but I am always thinking, and actually I keep going on about this show at the library, but that was the last time where, as I was there, I really wanted to just go home and do what I was thinking of. It's the last time I really feeling that urgency, because I really loved the idea. And
but like you say, I think we have, we're so, these days, if you're seeing something beautiful, it's so easy just to take your phone out and take a photograph, and then you sort of captured that.
Absolutely.
So you can sort of build up a sort of collection.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sort of help inspire and
Oh,
great. Well, thank you. That was a really good insight into the exhibition and the sort of process behind.
Pleasure. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you, Jess.